Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. Chucktober, day 23, talking about Chucky Season 2, Episode 8. So, the Season 2 finale, which feels kind of like a holiday special after the main stuff. So, yeah, it's titled Chucky, actually, obviously an homage to Love, actually, directed by Jeff Renfro, and written by Alex Delisle, Mallory Westfall, and Don Mancini. And this aired on November 23rd, 2022. So, at the end of the previous episode, Dr. Mixter tried running off with the Chucky doll, and then we saw the doll get shot in the mouth, and there was that moment where someone said, "Do you think his life is flashing before his eyes?" And so we get a repeat of that scene, and I quite liked how this was done. We know by this point that it's actually Dr. Mixter whose soul is in the doll, so we see her life flash before her eyes, well, primarily in relation to Chucky. And so we see a meeting of her with the 8-year old Chucky, and then the 14-year old, and they got the same actors to play these younger versions of Chucky. I thought it was a clever way of bringing them back. There was previously, I felt like there was this implication that Dr. Mixter may have encouraged Chucky to start doing the killing when he was a kid, but in here it seems more like she was asking him if he killed out of spontaneity or because he planned it or something like that. And I guess he likes both different aspects of spontaneity and planning and all that. So I guess it does show that he is just like this and was not acting on behalf of whatever Dr. Mixter had said. I think she just finds Chucky really fascinating as a person to study, similar to how in Hannibal, Dr. Du Maurier finds Hannibal Lecter very fascinating to study, even though he kills and eats people. So I really liked this sequence. It was a clever way to sort of end Dr. Mixter's storyline, I guess you could say, and bring back those Chuckies and whatnot. Um, there was also, sorry, I watched it this morning and I had a couple big things to do, so I kind of have to refresh myself on what else happened in the episode. Uh, let's see. Um, oh, so what we learn later is that, via a news report around Christmas time, 3 weeks later, is that Dr. Mixter, is known to have been involved with stuff that happened at the school, but it's kept very vague, I guess. And that Dr. Mixter's body was found at her office, and so Chucky transferred his soul from her body into a good guy doll that was at the office. And I guess he just sort of sticks around in that office, and nobody like comes in or out or questions anything. Like I don't know. We do see him at some point looking through a catalog, and one of the listings is a world's quietest chainsaw, and he figures, what the heck, I deserve it. I've been very naughty, something like that. And he gets a credit card, but the credit card says Chucky on it. Like, how does that work? Like, there's so much that's left unexplained. The trio, Lexi, Devin, and Jake, were sent to the Catholic School of the Incarnate Lord as a substitute for what their punishment was originally going to be, which is, getting imprisoned for allegedly making that homemade bomb that ended Gary's life, which, of course, that was Chucky's fault, but nobody would believe them. And so all this stuff happens with the school that causes the school to get shut down. I guess it's not really fully explained, but I'm guessing investigators, the police, found the bodies and figured it should be shut down. Uh, but it kind of feels like it's not really explained whether the trio are let off the hook? Like, are they not suspects in any of this? Why, like, are they just pardoned for uh, the reason that they were originally sent in for? Like, are they not sent to another correctional place? Like, I don't know. Like, it feels like this is one of those things in the Chucky universe where they sort of just sweep it under the rug and are like, okay, forget all that. This is the next thing that we're doing. Because when we catch up with the trio, Jake stays with Lexi. She said that he could stay overnight, and her mom doesn't really know. Um, oh, but before that, there was an addicts meeting. You know, Lexi was there, and Jake was listening, and Lexi was admitting that there was a monster in her life, and the viewer is supposed to think that maybe she's gonna talk about Chucky, and Jake even thinks so. But I think looking back, this time around, and maybe even the first time watching it, it felt like it would have been not believable. It like she knows that it would not be believable to mention Chucky, so it's like okay, the monster is gonna be addiction or depression or something, and she says if the monster is my mother, and it's like oh wow, so and rightfully so, her mother is the reason that it explains some of her behavior. Her mom just wants to be mayor, only cares about being popular, getting all the votes, doesn't really think about the family too much as she should. She should care more about the family. But yeah, so when Lexi brings Jake to her place, her mom has the a live stream on Instagram on her phone and is trying to pass it off as, "Oh, look at me. I'm a mayor. I'm the mayor and I'm adopting an orphan or maybe not adopting an orphan, but letting an orphan stay over for a bit, showing that she is charitable." But then Lexi surprises Jake and her mother, for that matter, by revealing that Devin is upstairs. He comes down with a present for Jake, and uh, Lexi's mom is very shocked by this, and she's getting a lot of likes and heart reactions on Instagram. So I don't know why she's against this. Lexi even mentions like it's more charitable for you to let two orphans stay over. So yeah, like this makes her mom look good. So this had me wondering, is this some sort of hint that maybe Lexi's mother is homophobic? Like, have we ever really gotten any hints of that in season one? Like, was there anything contradicting that idea? Like, I was kind of wondering if that's what they're going for here with Lexi's mom, but it could very well be just her mom not like being upset about her daughter not telling her everything. But yeah, it's just something I'm kind of wondering about. Later on, Lexi and her mom do have a bit of a talk. Lexi obviously being the better person in this, and her mom says she's glad that her daughter sees her own faults, turning it on her, which, like, it's really mean. um, but, um, yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of laughing at the way that those words fell out of my mouth. Yeah, I know that's super stupid that I'm laughing about it, but it does feel like there's a chance of reconciliation, at least, even if her mom is still full of herself. And meanwhile, Jake and Devin have this whole thing where, Devin gave a physical, a box present to Jake, and Jake feels bad because he doesn't have a present for Devin, and Devin's like, "I'm your present from Lexi," and like he's like, "Well, I'm your present from Lexi too, so I need to get you something else." And he later gets Devin a podcasting kit, but Devin says he hasn't been podcasting in a year. He's kind of over it, and so this is supposed to cause a little bit of conflict, but it doesn't really escalate too much, which is fine. I mean, it's after a few episodes of Jake and Devin being at odds for Jake being stupid, I was glad to just be back to this type of status quo that the show is back to. So another thing that happens, so Nika had shot Glenn in the previous episode. Um, Funny thing, I forgot to mention the in the previous episode when Glenda did their confession. They asked Father Bryce to do a prayer for Glenn and give Glenn the works, which in retrospect is very self-serving, given that Glenn and Glenda are literally the same person. They're not just twins who are separate people. So, but hey, I guess the prayer didn't work at all because Glenn got shot. But yeah, Glenn is in a coma with Glenda visiting and being by their side. Gets a call from Tiffany, who is still in Jennifer Tilly's body and trying to stay out of sight since Jennifer Tilly is a wanted woman. And Glenda mentions that Glenn doesn't have much longer, and that if Glenn dies, then they die. Glenn dies, Glenda dies. And I don't know that this was ever really established, because with Chucky, whenever Chucky splits his soul and one of the other Chuckies dies, the other Chuckies still go on. So is this true that if either Glenn or Glenda die, the other dies? Or, like, I don't know. Like, this, I was very confused about this. Or I wonder if maybe it's metaphorical, that maybe Glenda feels that if they lose a part of themselves, then they won't want to go on. Maybe it's that sort of thing. But on the phone, they come up with a plan, sort of, encouraging Tiffany to be Jennifer Tilly, to be an actress. And so what she ends up doing is disguising herself as a nurse and brings the Glenda doll. And there's a security guard who gets in the mix, and then they end up killing him before he can alert anyone. Glenda even uses the stabilizer things, electrocutes him, and he somehow gets fully on fire. I don't know if the science here checks out, but eventually he has a face so burned that it looks like something out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. Yeah, it's just very cartoony, this scene, I guess. And so Glenn and Glenda are put back in the doll. The soul is whole now, it's one, it's within the doll. And Tiffany sneaks out with the doll in the briefcase while the nurse at the desk goes back into the room and screams in shock as she sees the dead security guard and the dead Glenn and Glenda human bodies. So this shows that the babies whose souls were originally in these bodies in Seed of Chucky, before Tiffany put Glenn and Glenda in the bodies, that they are not still within these bodies. They've probably been long gone for whatever reason. Like I've speculated that maybe Glenn and Glenda's souls either merged with them or eradicated them because, as babies, they wouldn't be as strong. Maybe there's so many unanswered questions. It kind of bugs me. But we do get this scene where Billy Boyd reprises his role as the voice of the doll, Glenda, who now wants to go by Gigi, which thankfully that makes things easier. And it's kind of, in a strange way, a heartwarming scene, seeing Gigi look in the mirror with the new outfit, and being themselves, and being like, oh, it's me, and not conforming to you know obvious gender things, being non-binary and being themselves, and Tiffany being supportive of this, because Tiffany feels guilty about choosing for Glenda, but now they get to be who they are, and now I guess they're not technically 18. They're 24 technically, if you take into account the years originally spent in the doll. But yeah, I thought Billy Boyd did a nice job here. It was kind of funny how Tiffany questioned the accent and thought it didn't sound real enough, and it was like, you gotta dial it back to a 7, and then Gigi is like, what would Jennifer Tilly do? And she's like, amp it up. So I kind of like this bonding moment. But yeah, Gigi wants to go back to England, rediscover their roots, which I think is a decent write out for them. Maybe there was an intention to bring them back at a later point in the series, even if not in season 3. But I'm curious where Gigi goes from here, with both sides, the good Glenn and the killer Glenda. What do they end up doing? Do they are they just good, or do they kill people, or do they only kill people who are bad? I'm kind of curious, like what Gigi's new way of living is after Tiffany mails them to England. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of interested in that, but also kind of glad that Gigi doesn't have to get caught up in the chaos of their parents anymore. But again, curious about whether there was a return intended had the show continued beyond season 3. Hashtag save Chucky, hashtag renew Chucky, hashtag review Chucky. I feel like it's been a while since I last said that. But Tiffany also watches the mayor's live stream where she shows the different toys that she got to or actually it's she's showing her manger scene that she has, and she's like, and if it's difficult to complete, just find what's around, and it sees that the Belle doll that Caroline had been given by Dr. Mixter is part of the manger scene. And so Tiffany sees this as like, I just found a new sublet. So funny way of referring to that. So this is Tiffany's new goal, to break into the Cross residence and get the Belle doll so that she can transfer her soul into the doll and no longer be a wanted woman that Jennifer Tilly has become. So she breaks into the house at night, and this is after a heartwarming talk between Jake and Devin while they sleep over in Lexi's room. It's the trio, they're all good friends again now. The song from I think the season premiere appears in this. The song about trying, and it's a nice touch. But yeah, Tiffany breaks into the house, but so does Chucky, who comes down the chimney, and again, more believable than Chucky climbing up the chimney. The Chucky title card in this is made up of wreaths or trees or Christmassy stuff, something like that. So Chucky has the world's quietest chainsaw. But before he arrives, Lexi's mom comes down the stairs and sees Tiffany as like, oh my gosh, you're Jennifer Tilly. But wait, aren't you on the run? And is so gullible when Tiffany says, oh, that's just a misunderstanding. And that happened, her line, like, aren't you on the run, happened right when on this rewatch I thought to myself, shouldn't she know that Jennifer Tilly is a wanted woman? And then lo and behold, she does remember, but she's also stupid and starstruck. But then Chucky uses the chainsaw to slice the mom in half, and Tiffany is really upset about this, that he's left Lexi and Caroline as orphans, and Chucky wants to go after the trio, but he says, except for Caroline, she has potential there. So, there's this thing that's been foreshadowed even since season 1. But he also asks where Glenn and Glenda are, and Tiffany says they're dead. And Chucky's like, I wasn't born yesterday. So he knows that Tiffany is lying. And he wants to punish them because they disobeyed him. and I guess he wants to use the chainsaw on them, like kill his own children. Is that the implication here? If again, I'm really glad that Gigi is far away from all this. But Tiffany, um, oh, Lexi comes down and uses I think uses the chainsaw on the Chucky doll. Tiffany runs upstairs, but Devin and Jake are ready, and I think they try stabbing her. I don't remember there being lingering wounds, but they corner Tiffany, so the trio have her cornered in the hallway. But then, I really am sold on how scared Tiffany looks in this moment. But then we get Caroline coming into the picture, and she has the Belle doll and a knife, and has Tiffany hold the knife against her, and Caroline is the one who tells Devin to drop the phone, when he's about to call the police, which wouldn't they suspect that something is up here, and that Caroline is not going to be killed by Tiffany, and that Devin could just call the cops to come over? But no, he complies and puts the phone down. um, and Caroline reveals that Chucky told her that her real mom would come back for her, and so she thinks that Tiffany and Chucky are her biological parents somehow, and that she was adopted, and that's why she never fit in here. And I honestly can't remember if Caroline is indeed adopted. Like, Tiffany and Chucky are definitely not her biological parents. But I'm trying to remember, like, was it ever said somewhere that she was adopted? Like, maybe that part is true, but Lexi keeps insisting that she isn't, and Caroline says that Lexi is lying, and that that's not her real sister. Um, yeah, and something I noticed on this rewatch is the parallels about motherhood. We see Tiffany trying to be a better mother to Gigi, whereas Lexi's mother is just not really doing much of the effort, and just full on vanity. Whereas Tiffany is, I guess you could say, trying to shed away the vanity. One last stint acting as Jennifer Tilly, like in the spotlight before leaving the body type thing. So yeah, I quite like those thematic parallels there. But yeah, Caroline goes off with Tiffany, and they have the Belle doll with them. Um, Jake, Devin, and Lexi inform the police about what happened. The police officer says, "Shame. I thought Jennifer Tilly was kind of overrated." Miss Fairchild arrives, and they say, "You're never gonna believe who did this," and they say Chucky, and then Miss Fairchild is like, "I knew it." And so you kind of wonder, how much does Miss Fairchild really know, and what was like the origin of this character, and what's the plan for this character? Like, it gets you wondering, and I'm not sure that the series ever fully gives a satisfying explanation, but I do like that she is on their side. It's like when you read or watch a series of unfortunate events, and there's a guardian or two who seem like genuinely good people who could do right by the orphans, but the Baudelaires. But yeah, so Miss Fairchild is back in the picture. We cut to 3 more weeks later, so in January of 2023. And again, the events at the school were like late November, early December, whenever the exorcism took place. And then 3 weeks later was all this holiday stuff in this episode. But yeah, now it's mid January, and we see Tiffany with some sort of haircut to disguise herself. She's with Caroline and the Belle doll in a building in New York, some sort of apartment or hotel room or something. Gets the phone call from Nika, who I'm glad they remembered Nika before the end of this. I will say she feels like a different character than how Fiona Dourif played her in Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky. But like, I know Nika has been really through it, but it's hard to explain. Somehow Andy and Kyle feel like they've maintained who they were, how we last saw them, I guess in Cult of Chucky. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But Nika calls and says she wants to apologize for shooting Glenn. That was never her intention. But also says that Gigi calls her once a week. And it kind of sounds like Gigi maybe doesn't call their mom that often. That's kind of the subtext that I think I was reading into here, if it was intentional at all. Kind of weird that they keep in touch, even though I'm sure Gigi is smart enough to know that Nika wants to kill their mom. So it really makes you question some things. But Nika says, I'm still going to kill you, but I'm give you a head start. And looking through binoculars through a window, Nika is like, I love what you did with your hair. And so we know that it's a building not too far. We see it's above some sort of advertisement for Wicked, the musical. This made me speculate that maybe season 3 would be a musical season, which sadly it was not. But I mean, it's still better than this season, but maybe not as good as season 1, in my opinion. But anyway, Tiffany tries to do the soul transfer spell, but using the Voodoo for Dummies book, which I forgot to mention in the previous episode, the Father Bryce had an Exorcism for Dummies book, so continuing that gag that started in Bride of Chucky. But Tiffany thinks the spell didn't work, but then the doll rises and takes off the colored contacts and the hair and some face makeup, and it's revealed that it's not a Belle doll at all, but a good guy doll disguised as a Belle doll. And the first time I watched this, I thought this was super ridiculous. I wasn't sure if the logic here checks out, that like if it's convincing that a good guy doll could be disguised as a Belle doll. But looking at the way that, paying closer attention here, I guess the faces aren't too different from each other. So maybe it is believable after all that, Chucky could pull this off. So yeah, Chucky's soul is back in this Belle doll. Um, and I should mention that earlier there was this talk between Lexi, Devin, and Jake, wondering if they'll be like Kyle and Andy, just always wondering if Chucky's ever gonna come back and having to look over their shoulder. So I like that there was that grounded, very human conversation and all that anxiety and stuff. And speaking of anxiety, I think the flashbacks, I forgot to mention when Dr. Mixter's life flashes before her eyes, she is shown to be the one who helped Chucky uh, figure out which kids to follow in season 1, the trio plus Junior. And she said that in order to get them to do what you want, in order to get them to kill, you need to traumatize them. And they're teenagers, they're driven by their hormones and anxiety and yada yada yada. So I feel like that was kind of a way of hand waving why Junior would go along with Chucky's plan and comply with Tiffany and sort of not question things. At least it felt that way to me, that maybe it was trying to hand wave away some of that. But yeah, Dr. Mixter was definitely in on all this during season 1, which I thought was an interesting layer there. And so, of course, she was the one who gave Caroline the Belle doll, which was actually a good guy doll. So I kind of wonder if she was aware of that fact, that it was a good guy doll disguised as a Belle doll, or if Chucky just told her to give her the Belle doll and not knowing it was a good guy doll. But yeah, like there's this backup plan, and it makes me want to think back of realistically, would Chucky have planned this far ahead? Like, would he have known for sure that Tiffany would end up in a situation where she would try to transfer her soul into a Belle doll, and in doing so actually resurrect Chucky in this fake Belle doll? Like, I don't know. There's, you could maybe poke holes in it that maybe Chucky wouldn't have fully thought out that entire thing. Um, but yeah, I don't. Well, actually, yeah, I don't know, because there's a Chucky within Nika's head, and so maybe that one was trying to plan Tiffany's downfall. But there's also the Chucky doll that would have been working with Dr. Mixter. Um, well, a couple different Chucky dolls. So yeah, I don't know if the plan makes fully makes sense. You know, I feel like I would have to like try mapping it out, but I'm tired of overthinking it. I can't go through this right now. But yeah, it's a twist ending, um, a huge surprise, and really gets you amped up for what could happen in season three. And Caroline smiles, so it seems like Caroline maybe favors Chucky more than Tiffany, which makes one wonder if she really believed Tiffany was her mom, or if she was told by Chucky to say all this or pretend all this, if Tiffany ever ends up breaking into the house and Caroline is there. Um, like it feels like she's more on Tiffany's side than Chucky's side. So yeah, I don't know. There are so many questions here. Um, so yeah, I think this episode was good, but it does, you know, it ends the season, but in ending the season, it also guarantees that certain questions are left unanswered. But it was still really entertaining. Some things came full circle. So I think I'd give this episode an 8 out of 10. It's maybe not as exciting as the penultimate episode, doesn't have, or has a bit more head scratchers. But yeah, so I kind of want to do the math of my ratings for this season. So 8.25 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6.75 plus 6.5. How many episodes is that? Okay. Plus 5.5 plus 5. And did I get all 8 there? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 right there. What am I missing? Geez, this is gonna bug me. Let's see. Oh, there's another 8 for the episode 4. So 55, divide that by 8, and so the season gets a 6.875. So not quite at what would be considered fine. It's like on the high end of okay. Well, I guess it's okay to fine. Um, but yeah, like I've already talked about the slumps in this season. Some places where the Tiffany storyline could have been done better. I do appreciate that Glenn and Glenda were brought back into the fold and that we got at least some closure for those threads from Seed of Chucky, even though some of it wasn't fully explained well or if at all. But there are things here and there that were explained and were interesting to see play out. And again, the whole school storyline, there was some stuff there that felt really annoying to me, but it came together with the exorcism episode and the stuff that happened there. But yeah, thankfully season 3, from what I remember, is a bit more to my liking. So tomorrow I'll be back talking about Chucky season 3 episode 1, which is titled, what was that titled? Murder at 1600. So I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to Chucktober here on Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and I'll see you all soon.